Hello and a very warm welcome to Weekly Current Affairs. Today is Saturday and we'll be taking up the miscellaneous topics that have been figured out in various newspapers. My name is Madhusudan Reddy and let's begin with this session. Today we are going to take up three different topics that is associated with triple dip La Nina. What is triple dip La Nina? What are the impacts? And how is Indian climate change that is happening? Now the video that you are going to see back here is an indication of the changes of water. How is it going to take place? We are going to discuss this in very detail. So stay tuned for this article. And the next article that we are going to take up is monsoon early retrieval. There is early retrieval of the onset of the monsoons that have been issued by the Indian Meteorological Department. So if these kind of notifications or these kind of articles come into examination, how the government changes in terms of its functionary, we should also look into those aspects. We'll be taking up, and we'll also be understanding the early retrieval, why it is happening. And next, another article that has been figured out in the newspaper is the moonlighting. Now what is moonlighting? What are the impacts? What are the legalities? We are going to discuss in very detail. So stay tuned until the last end of this video to understand these articles in detail. So let's begin with today's session. Today our first article that I am going to take up is regarding the moonlighting. After the moonlighting, we'll go to the La Nina, El Nina, and what exactly it is talking about. Right. So the first article which has been figured out in various newspapers, and one such term which is in use and circulating is the moonlighting. If you know the term in the definition of the moonlighting, please do comment in the comment section. And if you also do have any doubts, what you can do is just post it in the comment section. We will address it for you. Right. So let's begin. Here it is said that the Wipro, one of the giants of the IT company, has fired around 300 odd people from their offices. Now the major reason citing for that kind of firing is the term called moonlighting. So firstly, let us understand what exactly is the term moonlighting refers to. Suppose you are an employee and working in one particular office on a full-time job, and if you also want to work in another office at the night time, that means you are working at two different places. So usually the secondary job which you are doing is nothing but a job which is nothing but you are doing in addition to an first job. So these kind of two jobs, when you are working in one office and doing a job in other office, that is your moonlighting. And moonlighting in simple term refers to the practice of taking up secondary job after a regular working hours. Now is it legal? Is it ethical? What are the rules and regulations that I have mentioned in various acts that we have to know for the examination purpose? Right. Now this secondary job is taken without an employer's knowledge. Here moonlighting is called only when the employer don't know that you employee is working in a different company. That means you are taking revenue from both the companies. Now let us quickly understand from where this term has evolved. See, the phrase has become very well known when the Americans began looking forward for a secondary job when they already had a first job, and that's when this phrase became very famous. Post that, in the recent times when the COVID came up, it is during COVID times, many online companies or many IT companies, they have given the work from home options. And during those times, a person who is working on one particular software also has the liberty to work with other company on the same platform and use the resources of this company to execute the work of other company. Right. So these are some of the things that have been in news, and Wipro, the chairman, said that this is completely cheating, unethical activity that you are going to do. Right. But firstly, try to understand, why do people go for this kind of moonlighting? In simple terms, two jobs, two revenue. Right. When you have two jobs, you'll have two revenues. That is an extra source of income. That is the first reason why people go for. And some people do have another other tendency that if I am working in one particular set of skills, I wanted to enhance my set of skills so that I can diversify my work area. This is another reason. That means a person can explore options in terms of learning the skills. Right. And also some people do have the habit of challenging themselves. Can they do this job by doing this job? For example, you preparing for UPSC along with your job. This is not moonlighting. But when you do another job with the present job, then it is moonlighting. So some do have the challenging aspects that when they are working in one place, they also wanted to work in other place for skills or for challenging themselves. But at the end, it is the revenue that comes into picture. Do you really are in the ethical note or in an non-ethical note, right? Now let us try to understand the arguments in favor and against the concept of moonlighting. So if you are in favor of the moonlighting or against the moonlighting, please do comment in the comment section, right? So first let us try to understand the negativities of the moonlighting. See, for example, you are an employee and you are employed in a company. The company always wants 100% from that employer, right? If that 100% is not given, don't you think that the employer is paying the complete salary but the work is not being received? Now this is a unethical activity or unprofessional activity which is involved in the moonlighting. But when you are involved in the moonlighting concept, what happens is that you already work around 8 to 9 hours in one particular job, and the next few hours later you start to work in other jobs. That means on an average you will be working around 16 odd hours, and in this condition it is understood that the human is inefficient to deliver in his original job when a person works for 16 to 17 hours. That means the quality of delivery comes into picture, right? Now look into the other side of the aspect. Suppose you are employed in one particular company and you are taking only salary and you are not being given any kind of incentives from that company, and you also have an act. That means there are acts which mentions about the Factories Act. Suppose you have a Factory Act. In the Factory Act it clearly mentions that a full-time employee who is working in a factory is not supposed to work in a different area, right? Why? Because a person who is working in the factory, usually the factory wants 100% delivery there. But does the IT employees comes into that Factory Act? This is what the question. The answer here is no. People who are working in the factory, they comes under the Factory Act, but people who are working in the IT companies, they comes under the IT Professional Act. So here it is generally understood that it is legal but may not be ethical in terms of working at two different places. Now on the other scale, there are also other big giants which came up and said that companies like Swiggy and Zomato, they said that they are happy with moonlighting with their employees working in their own company, and they can also work in some other companies, right? Suppose you might have ordered some food item from Blinkit, a Zomato guy might have been delivering to you. This is an indication that the person is moonlighting, and delivery companies, they are very much happy with it. Now why are the IT companies not happy with it? Why are the professional companies not happy with it? Here you need to know that the concept of intellectual property rights comes into your picture. Suppose you are working on a platform and this platform is being built by so much of intellectual property rights, right? Now you have X number of intellectual property rights in this project. You have gained that skill set, and then while working you understood that you only take 6 to 8 hours to work here, and later you also felt that you wanted to work in a different company for 5 to 6 hours, or in terms of when you have done the same job and you wanted to deliver it on the same day, it generally takes around 4 to 5 hours or less time than this, right? And you go and enroll with a different company. Now here, if the same person is using this skill set to execute other companies' projects, then here comes a picture of intellectual property rights which have been owned by this company, which has been shared to you in the form of knowledge transfer. That knowledge transfer you are using it for another company. Now this is an unethical activity or intellectual property rights failure. This is what is one of the side of an argument that the moonlighting concept is being criticized on, right? Now you can ask me, sir, what are the legal charges that can be implied or which can be imposed if a person does these kind of activities? Here on a professional note, there are some acts that works against this. The number one act is the Factories Act. Factories Act clearly says that they do not allow the factory persons to work in another factory, but this is only applicable to the factories but not to the professional companies. For that you have an IT law, IT companies law. IT companies law completely do not say no to these kind of activities, right? Now the company will employ an employee only on the basis of agreement. That agreements will decide whether the person can work or not work. So it is said that there are no clear-cut guidelines when they have joined, so that's why we do not intend that it is an unethical activity. This is what we have to know with respect to UPSC, and there can be questions of the leakage of confidentiality as well. Now what do you mean by leakage of confidentiality? It is nothing but sharing of the intellectual property rights of that company, right? Now You see, the persons who are involved in Swiggy and Zomato, do they have any intellectual property rights sharing? It is simply a manual labor who are using the technology and delivering it to you. Here, there is no involvement of intellectual property rights. But you have learnt a skill in one of the software company by their training methods, and then night time you wanted to use this training skills in some other company and get a revenue and also get the social security of this company as well and another company of social security as well. So here comes the conflict. So this conflict need to be addressed. So here for our examination, this is an ethical dilemma. Legal but ethical concepts can be introduced here. So this is what is in news. Mostly for preliminary examination, it is the term which is very much important. For mains examination, the analysis as well as the some basics of conflict redressal mechanisms. Now coming to our next article, here see, these are newspaper articles which have been published in the Hindu newspaper and Indian Express newspaper as well. How climate change is altering Indian monsoon. This has been article which has been published around 4 to 5 days before, Monday or Tuesday, which said that our monsoon has been changing its dynamics. Now how is it changing? It is said that it is very much evident in the current time period. If you are somewhere in the North India, you might be witnessing the rainfall, and that too, this is the month of September. Today is September 24th. This is unusual rainfall which we generally don't see, and you are being impacted because of this kind of climatic changes. Now these unusual rainfalls are bad for the farmers. They will be expecting rains little later. Now it is almost yet the time for harvesting of few crops. During the time of harvest, mostly the crops do not need this kind of rainfall, and it is also the time period when the retreat of the monsoon should start from India, where the southwest monsoons move little southwards and the northeast monsoons come little southwards. So this onset in today's time period, it has been advanced by at least 8 to 10 days. 8 to 10 days of advancement is something very big in the Indian meteorological terms. Now how is this going to impact? Let us see. In the recent times, you might have heard that last week or so that there are floods in the Bengaluru, right? Now in this context, there is another article which is talking about there is northeast monsoon which has been onset. ये जो onset है 8 to 10 days, it has been advanced, and Chennai, the city which is lying on the southeast coast of India, receives rainfall in the month of October and November. Bengaluru anyways has seen its plight with respect to floods, but what is Chennai has to do with this upcoming rainfall? Here it is said that let Chennai be saved from the Bengaluru style of flooding. Now what is this article talking about? That Chennai, which will receive rainfall from 2 dimensions, what are these 2 dimensions, are very much important for our examination. Let us quickly see the reasons behind the Chennai rainfall and the double whammy of Chennai. See, Indian monsoon, India receives its monsoon in 2 dimensions, right? Number 1, you have your hills here, and then this is your northeastern region, and right. So usually in the months of June and July, you have your monsoon trough here. There are winds that will be coming from southwest and both the sides, right? These are your southeast trade winds. They turn, cross the equator, and they come in the form of southwest monsoons. These southwest monsoons usually come and reach the trough of the monsoon or the ITCZ zone. And here you have Tibet. This Tibetan region is a plateau. On an average, it is 4 kilometers above sea level, right? So here you have to understand that this is the monsoon trough. It is present in the month of June. It will be on the northern part of India, but when you come to month of September and October, what happens is that the same monsoon trough will start to be present little lower. Where is it present? It will be present somewhere here. That means when you come into the winter season, by the month of January or February, the monsoon trough will be somewhere in the southern period, and here the winds will start to retreat back. What is this called? Retreating monsoon. When the winds, that southwest monsoons which were present almost on the Himalayan belt, they will start to go backward, and then there are other winds that are advancing from the northeast side, right? And this is called the northeast monsoon or the retreating monsoon. Now, why is it called retreating monsoon? Here you have to understand that the retreating monsoon means the winds that have reached almost till the Himalayan regions, they are retreating back by the advancement of the northeast trade winds in this direction. So, because of that, this ITCZ zone will now shift southward by the month of January. It will be somewhere in the southern hemisphere. So, this is called as northeast retreating monsoon. Now, during the time of northeast retreating monsoon, here most of the rainfall on India do have its rainfall in the eastern coast of India. So, let's see if this is your India, and the rainfall that you get to see is on the eastern coast of India. Now, on the eastern coast of India is this, especially this eastern coast, it will receive much of the rainfall. Now, anyways, Bangalore time has been up, there were good rainfalls and most of them it is flooding. And this flooding is associated with the concept called triple dip La Nina that we are going to deal with the other article, the next article. So, stay tuned to complete this. Now, this northeastern monsoon time period, you will get heavy rainfalls in Chennai. So, Chennai gets rainfall from northeast monsoon, right? And at the same time, Chennai also receives its rainfall in the form of cyclonic rainfall. Suppose there is a cyclone that has been formed in the month of in the month of October or November, right? And these cyclones, they do travel towards east se lekar west they travel. Why do they travel from east to west? If you know the answer, please comment in the comment section. Because you will have winds, most of the winds that are present in this region are either easterlies. In this particular area, you have winds of easterlies. Easterlies are nothing but those winds that are coming from east to west. Okay? If the wind is traveling from east to west, they are called as easterlies, and if they are present in the northern hemisphere, they are called as northeasterlies. So, northeasterly winds which are present in the month of October, November here. So, these winds will push the cyclone towards the west. So, ultimately the cyclone will come and hit any of the coast on the eastern side. So, this cyclone being a very large water mass area, it will bring rainfall even to Chennai as well. Okay? It will bring the rainfall to Chennai, it will bring rainfall to the eastern coast of India, and usually the Sundarbans is considered to be the capital city of this cyclone. Now, Bangalore lessons we have learned. Now, these articles talks about in the next month or so, there is going to be intense cyclonic activity which we will see in the Bay of Bengal, and also this cyclonic rainfall along with the northeastern monsoon rainfall, this northeastern monsoon rainfall, especially the cities, the biggest city on the east coast of India is Chennai. Chennai, from the year 1990 to 2020, this city has grown ninefold. Okay, this city has grown ninefold. Now, what does this mean? Earlier the size of the city was this, but the size of the city has grown into 9 times within a span of 20 to 25 years. By this indication, all the wetlands that are present in the city of Chennai, they have been filled with concretes because too much of concretization that has happened. So, Chennai every year it gets flooded. One reason it is because of the northeast monsoon. The second reason it is because of the cyclonic activity. Now, is the city of Chennai that is ready to face the upcoming flooding season? What lessons do we need to take from the Bangalore flooding? This is what the article talking about, right? And the article also says that there is going to be intense northeast monsoon season along with the concept of El Nino La Nina conditions. India is currently in the La Nina condition time period, and this is the longest La Nina time period in the last century or so. So, now what do you mean by this La Nina time periods? La Nina time periods are nothing but those time periods when there are cold water which are very, very intense and present in the Pacific Ocean. Those cold waters in the Pacific Ocean are impacting India. But how are these waters which are present in the Pacific Ocean impacting the climate of India? And they are increasing this northeast monsoon intensity, as well as they are also increasing the flooding kind of situations in India. Now, most of the floods this year are associated with the concept of La Nina. Now, what is this La Nina? Let us try to understand. Now, on a similar note, you also see a different article that has been present in the newspaper here. It talks about there is a triple dip La Nina that is present in the Indian conditions. Here this is an Indian Express newspaper article which talks about that the triple dip La Nina. La Nina refers to an ENSO. ENSO matlab El Nino Southern Oscillations. This is called as El Nino Southern Oscillations. Now what do you mean by El Nino Southern Oscillations? See, for some time forget this word. What do you mean by Southern Oscillations? That means in the southern hemisphere somewhere there are some oscillations that are going down. Now what is these oscillations? It can be temperature oscillations, that means at times the temperature can be up and at times the temperature can be down, and this is being reversed, that means it is oscillating, right? This is called oscillation. Now there are temperature oscillations, there are also temperatures of the water oscillations, and at the same time there is also wind oscillations. All these oscillations which are happening in the central part of the Pacific Ocean are impacting the Indian monsoons as well, and it is said that this has been the impact and it led to the triple dip La Nina. So before you understand this, you first need to understand the concept of ENSO. Okay? ENSO, that is El Nino Southern Oscillations, can be studied in the form of El Nino and La Nina. Now what are the different conditions that are present in these two? Here you need to know. See, El Nino, La Nina are the principles which are mostly associated with the language of the Chilean and the Peruvian coast. Okay? Portuguese or Latin American language. Here El Nino has the conditions of warm water. That means there is warm water in the Pacific Ocean. Usually the waters of the Pacific Ocean are cold. Let me show you firstly the waters of the Pacific Ocean. Right, the waters of the Pacific Ocean, this is your Pacific Ocean. This particular water which is cold on a normal terms. Usually the water near to the Peruvian coast, it is cold. This cold water, while they travel, they bring in fresh nutrients onto the coast of west coast of Peru. So fresh it is, there is so much of fisheries ground. Whenever you find this cold water coming up, while they come up, they bring out so much of nutrients. When you have that kind of nutrients, and slowly you will have good fisheries here. But in the times of summer in the southern hemisphere, at times instead of cold water that is present here, the same water will turn out to be warm. When they turn out to be warm, the fishes won't be present there as they are present in the cold water current season. And that is when people who went into the fishing, they say, oh child Christ, there are no fishes here. It means to say that the child Christ is other name of El Nino. Okay? El Nino means instead of the cold water, you have warm water. Now this El Nino phenomena, every few years, every 7 odd years, you will get to see this kind of phenomena, right? And this phenomena is followed by another phenomena the very next year. That is called as La Nina. La Nina is a condition where you will get to see instead of warm water, the more intensive cold water can be seen here. See, this is a normal year. During the times of normal year, the water that is present on the west coast of South America or this in the east coast of Pacific Ocean, you will have cold water. But during the times of El Nino, you will have warm water. Now La Nina year is nothing but whenever you have this cold water, very intense cold water, that condition will bring good amount of rainfalls to even India, and they will have good fishery grounds as well. So El Nino, it has a phenomena of staying for maximum 1 year, but La Nina can stay. La Nina is in the normal year, it gets intensified. So here you will get to see it can stay for 2 years also. This condition can stay for 2 years also. Currently this year is also a La Nina year, and this is the 3rd year that is going to experience the La Nina conditions. Now when you have La Nina conditions for the 3 consecutive times, then it is called as triple dip La Nina. But here you need to understand how is this triple dip La Nina which is impacting the Indian monsoon system and intensifying the climatic changes phenomena, for which you need to be very much clear that the ocean water that is present, the ocean water will not stay at one single place. They move out in the form of currents, and these currents can move either in the form of cold water or they can move in the form of warm water. Either they can move at the surface or they can go deep into the ocean water. That means they can be deep water. The movement of these water is completely relied upon the topography, also the movement of the wind, as well as some frictional forces along with a factor of Ekman transportation as well. Now topography plays a major role here. What kind of topography will it play? Here you need to know that the topography here is a major role that plays. Here see, whenever these winds they go and hit the coastlines, or these water they go and hit the coastlines, they change their directions. Likewise in the Indian Ocean also you have the waters moving, and the waters even come from the Pacific Ocean to Indian Ocean also. They come in the name of Luvian Current. Luvian is a current which is present on the western coast of Australia, and those waters they come into the Indian Ocean also. So any water, if it is present near the poles, it will be cold in nature, and if the same water it is present near to the equator, they will be warm in nature. And the cold water and warm water they generally tend to intermix among themselves. While they are mixing, they can travel on the surface as well, they can travel at the depth as well, right? Like this, the currents of the the currents of the Pacific Ocean they enter into Indian Ocean. That means any changes in the Pacific Ocean will also impact the Indian Ocean. And you already know the monsoons in India, they do come from the southwestern region. 70% of the rainfall to India comes from the southwest monsoon season, but only 20 to 30%, around near about 20% we get rainfall from the northeastern region. Now this southwest monsoon, when they come, they bring out winds from the southern hemisphere. They do get the winds of the southern hemisphere, that too in the Indian Ocean. यहाँ पे जो any changes that you get to see here in the southern hemisphere, in the Indian Ocean as well, it is the moisture that has been evaporated, and then they come to India after crossing equator. Why do they come to India? They come to India because there is a low pressure system that has been set up. Now let me show you the Luvian current. What is it? Here Luvian current is nothing but the waters of the Pacific Ocean, they are entering into the Indian Ocean, right? The waters of the Pacific Ocean, they are entering into the Indian Ocean. Now this current is Luvian current. This Luvian current at times it can be warmer, it can be colder. Now this exchange of water will lead to the temperatures in the Indian Ocean as well. When you see these kind of temperature changes in the Indian Ocean, you will simply get to see so much of changes in the atmospheric phenomena. Here you need to understand that the conditions of El Nino and the conditions of La Nina are changes that are happening within the ocean and also in the atmosphere of the air. So any changes that you get to see in the atmosphere, you will also get to see changes in the ocean as well. So let's see what exactly is this El Nino and La Nina coming up with. On a general basis, you know that normal year the temperatures are very normal, and on the here the kind of winds that are present on the coast of South America is easterlies. When there are winds that are traveling on the easterlies, that means winds are coming from east to west. When they are coming in, this cold water is uplifted, right? And the next year there is too much of warm water here. Now the article here says that this particular normal condition which is intensified, that is usually you have cold water here, but now during the times of La Nina you have extreme cold water. This extreme cold water will start to move in the direction, and then they also enter into the west with the help of the Luvian current. They also enter into Indian Ocean. In the Indian Ocean again there is a concept called Indian Ocean dipole. Indian Ocean dipole is a time period when, if this is your India, it says that and this is your Africa. Okay, just imagine if you have warm water here and if you have cold water here, this is the positive for India. Okay, if you have warm water here and cold water here, now this is a condition which is in the Indian Ocean, it is positive for India. During the time of positive Indian Ocean dipole, you will get good rainfalls to India. Okay, very good rainfalls to India. But see here, at the time of the El Nino conditions, I said the water in the Pacific Ocean will be warm. This warm water, if they also enter onto the western coast of India or the western coast of Indian Ocean, the dynamic equilibrium of the Indian Ocean changes, because of which you will not get good rainfall during a time of El Nino time period. But see here, during the time of La Nina, that is normally your intensification itself is La Nina, here whatever the conditions you see here, you will get to see the same conditions in an intensified manner in the La Nina conditions, which is the present conditions. And the major reason for the rainfall in today's North India, which has been mentioned in the article, is also because of the La Nina type of conditions, that is extreme events of rainfall with respect to climate change and global warming. Now this has resulted in the onset of northeast trade winds a little earlier, right? Earlier means 7 to 8 days is a very big time for the onset of the monsoons, little early. Why is that? I'll discuss in the next couple of minutes, but let's finish this topic here. Now you understood that, see, when this cold water, if the cold water is very extreme during the times of normal times in the Indian Ocean, the Indian Ocean dipole, which is positive, will be very strong, will be very strong. If the Indian Ocean dipole is very strong, we'll get strong rainfalls, very strong rainfalls, which is sometimes good to India, but also if not managed well, you will get to see very bad rainfalls. Then these rainfalls we get to see in the form of flooding situations, cloudburst very often you will get to see, and also flooding like situations. When there are floods, the major problem associated with the floods is one, survival of the people's life, and the second activity is the diseases after 1 month. Because whenever you have floods, usually what happens, the river water enters into the other areas and the fresh water will mix with the bad water or the murkish water, and this murkish water, brackish water, murky water, all this water, they get intermingled. When they get intermingled, you don't know what is fresh water and what is a brackish water. Here in these conditions, most of the people will do have typhoid like situations and waterborne diseases. So the government of India will have to be prepared in medical angle, in all other different administrative methodologies to deal with these kind of situations. Now let us try to understand the concept of why do we have, if the onset of this monsoon is little earlier as mentioned in this article, okay, and this is northeast monsoon which is having its onset little earlier, the article also says that most of the east coast of India it receives rainfall, that too in the form of northeast, right? Now the cropping pattern should, the cropping जो भी crops होगा, all these crops need to be advanced at least 10 days, because in India the irrigation is reaching only up to 60% or 50% of the farmers. Rest of the farmers are lying on the monsoonal activity. That means there is more monsoons that are going to, that means more farmers, they are reliant upon the monsoons, right? If the more people are relied upon the monsoons, they always go for the monsoonal rainfall cropping pattern. Now all the crops need to be advanced at least 7 to 8 days in advance. That means the government of India should start to disperse the seeds in advance, and the APMC mandis, they have to schedule their cropping the harvesting methodologies in advance. The Ministry of Finance, the Ministry of Agriculture, they need to change lot of administrative changes. Along with this, the disaster management calendar, which usually follows a standardized calendar, that need to be advanced. The district magistrates, all over, overall entire machinery that has been put forward for the crisis management, that need to be put on their toes. Along with that, the economic budget plans that have been thought of, that this year is going to be a good reaping agricultural inputs or agricultural outputs this year, now that need to be calculated as well. The Fasal Bima Yojana, the funding, the machineries, overall you will get to see lot many changes in the coming administrative changes. So here is, this is the significance of these kind of articles. Now mostly in the preliminary examination, the kind of questions, if at all an examiner can have the possibility to ask, they might be asking about the phenomena of the El Nino and La Nina. Now there can be questions framed in the mains examination in various different angles. It can be, they can ask you the principles, because these days itself the geography has turned out to be very technical paper in terms of asking the principles behind them. Technicality in sense, they are asking the principles here, right? And these principles, they can be understood by understanding the concept, which is very easy to write. But the impact of the El Nino on the monsoon, or the impact of the El Nino on the Indian economy, or else the changes that have been seen or the adaptations that you have made with respect to the conditions of El Nino and La Nina. Now these are some of the areas where we have to look forward for, and also the changes of the cropping pattern that are associated with the El Nino and La Nina. So India has been seeing this El Nino and La Nina for centuries, but the intensity of this El Nino and La Nina in the recent times have been increased. It is generally said that the intensity has been increased more number of times, and this year it is going to see triple dip La Nina, right? But before I go any further, I wanted to ask you one question. When do we get to know this year is an El Nino year, or when do we get to know this year is a La Nina year? At what time period? How much advance time period पे हमें जानने के लिए मिलेगा? Is it 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months? The answer here is somewhere around 6 months time period. You will already get in advance to know that this year is going to be an El Nino year. This year it is going to be a La Nina year. Now how do we know 6 months in advance before? It is because, see, when you have summer in the northern hemisphere, you will have winter in the southern hemisphere. El Nino is a phenomena, or the La Nina is a phenomena where you will get to see in the southern oceans, that means in the southern Pacific Ocean and the equatorial Pacific Ocean, which brings some changes in the Pacific Ocean of the north and some changes in the Indian Ocean as well, right? Here you will get to see this kind of changes in the months of December itself. Early onset of the December or January or February you will get to know, because usually it is summer here, and during the times of summer what happens at times, instead of a low pressure system that need to be developed at Australia, there will be a high pressure system that will be developed. High pressure means on the west coast of Australia you will get to see some cold water, right? The temperatures which are being calculated at the two ports, that is Tahiti and Darwin, in the months of Jan, Feb and March. By the time of March, India will not get monsoons. India will get monsoons only in the month of July, August or June, right? Early in the June we will get. That means, will we get good rainfalls in the June? We will get to know in the month of February itself. Why? In the months of February we will know the temperatures of the water here, because the water temperature, if it is changing here in the months of February or December, usually it is summer time, if the water instead of being cold they turn out to be warm, which the water that are coming from the Antarctican region, then it is easily understood that this year is going to be an El Nino year. Now this is the month of September, and we are estimating that next year is also going to be an El Nino year, sorry, La Nina year. That means we are going to see some good rainfalls, not just this year, in the coming year also. That means we can go for the crop predictions and go for some water intensive crops, or else the government of India can plan accordingly with respect to the soil health card as well. And also Har Ghar soil test. This is the program that is run by the Indian government as well. They are going to every farm field and they are checking the soil test. If the soil quality is good and the irrigation methodologies are good, then you can go for a better crop. Wherever the people who are relying on the farm machinery with respect to the monsoons, then it is very easy for us to rely upon these kind of monsoon system as well. So the crop, more water intensive crops can be grown. So all in all, this article talks about the multidimensional aspects of the El Nino and its impact on the day-to-day life as well as the changes in the monsoons. Now there are some facts which have been mentioned in this article. Let's see, the El Nino episodes typically last for about 9 months to an year. Okay, it says that the El Nino will last for around 9 months to an year. Yes, 9 to 1 year, this is El Nino. But La Nina will last for, it will be there for somewhere around 2 years and sometimes 3 years also. This is what we are going to see here. This is the triple dip. Now what do you mean by triple dip? That means for the 3 consecutive years we are going to see that La Nina year in India, right? And the second fact, in the recent years, the El Nino of 2015, which is spread over 19 months, but this La Nina has crossed this time period, right? Now the biggest La Nina conditions in the last century or so, it is this year, right? And the next fact that have been given in this article is, having started in the September 2020, this La Nina is started in the September 2020 and it has prevailed for the last 24 months, and looks set to continue for another 6 months and thus being classified as triple dip La Nina, right? It is now considered as triple dip La Nina. Why? 3 years. Now lastly, however, El Nino and La Nina events are not major images of each other, they are different in length and strength. Now these kind of points can be the preliminary points which can be asked in your preliminary examination, right? So this is what with respect to our news articles of miscellaneous activity. Moonlighting, yes, it is a very important article, can be seen in the sociological angle or in the ethical dilemmas as well, and the rest two are environmentally linked articles with respect to monsoon of northeast and the geographically article which is El Nino and La Nina. If you do like our videos, please press that like button and please make sure to write the mains answer. The mains answer for today's Seize the Mains question, it will be here. Please make sure to answer this question. The link will be provided in the description below. This is a Seize the Mains question which I am going to give you, where you can write your answers and submit. The link will be put down, press that link where you can write the answer and then submit it to us. Our expert evaluators are ready to help you to evaluate it free of cost. Please make sure to utilize this opportunity. Now today's question for the Seize the Mains is, what is triple dip La Nina? What are the socio-economic impacts associated with triple dip La Nina? Discuss. And you can write in 250 words, right? You can write in 250 words. Please make sure to utilize this opportunity and do write your answers and submit down. So our expert evaluators will evaluate. And thank you. See you in the next week with more miscellaneous topics which are most relevant for UPSC. Thank you and see you guys.